François Verlinden didn't use the hose for his build of the tank trailer. It looks a bit strange in my opinion.
Do you feel?
I look at the sprue and the instructions again.
Hey, 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 good looking. If you're not already tooken, won't you meet me soon?
Let's talk about glue. These are the glues I use for styrene. For clear parts I mostly use PVA glue because it dries transparently. And the glass bottle is a mixture I use for gluing as well as for filling. It's similar to liquid glue with dissolved pieces of sprue. I don't use any Tamiya glue or cement, especially not the extra thin, and you'll see one of the reasons later in this video. The main reason is simply that I'm a very slow modeler and I don't like any materials or tools that give me the impression I had to work faster. Why do I show you these tools? Well, mainly because of that cheap side cutter. I don't have one of these great sprue cutters that would save me a lot of time. I used this side cutter since around 1996 and it works. That's all I expect. To remove small parts from the sprue, I use my hobby knife. That works too, as long as you push the part you want to cut off gently down on the mat. The upper tank half had two spots that needed some sanding.
Tell me what's cooking. Do you feel like booking some fun tonight?
Both tank halves cleaned up.
Looking if you're not already tooken.
Front and rear wall of the tank and the manhole lid.
The light of the moon. Why
Somehow I like this very simple rendition of a wing nut. I've got better looking ones in my scrap box, but I'll leave this one as it is.
come in the sky?
I glued front and rear wall in place using a glue putty mixture and pulled the axles flat with glue. This way I did gluing and filling in one step.
That delish little
Some filling was necessary along the joints of the tank's halves. I should have used some masking tape and I'll do that the next time. Because of the shrinkage I used a little more of the filler. The chassis cleaned up and ready for assembly. First parts were the leaf springs. I removed the seam line as good as possible. The taillights were to be wired and that's why I drilled these holes. Then the shock absorbers were mounted. They had locator pins, but there were no matching holes on the axle, so I cut off those pins. The leg for the front roller was glued in the towing position. After 24 hours of curing, I sanded the joints smooth. I wanted to add some extras and made notes on the instruction sheet. First extra were valves for the wheels. I drilled 0.5mm holes and cut short pieces of matching brass wire. My girlfriend bought me this pencil for less than €1. It's great for picking up small parts and positioning them on the model. And here's the result. Barnett had sent me a lot of useful things and there were different silicone threads too. I used pieces of the thinnest one to wire up the taillights. The thread is really great for that purpose, but I only used it where it would be visible. I just didn't want to waste it. Then I added 2 clamps made from a strong aluminum foil.
What do they say when they see me coming their way? J.J. Jackson, you're as sharp as a tack with the belt in your back. I'm draped to the break.
On the actual trailer, the front leg wouldn't stay up without tightening, so a handle was needed. I made it from 0.6mm copper wire and drilled a matching hole.
Pay no mind to the conversation with my nose in the air. Nevertheless, I swear they holler. He ain't only classy, but he's fat and he's sassy. Oh, what do they shout?
Next, I added a plug to the wiring. It was made from a short piece of the trailer's axle. I decided to leave the pump as it is. As you can see on the box art, it looks nice with a little dry brushing and weathering. Then I assembled chassis and tank. No fit issues up to this point. The empty space is waiting for the hose. Apart from the seam line that had to be removed, the hose's end looked odd. I cut off a piece and drilled out the new end.
Now listen here, Jack.
Then it was glued in place, but I wasn't completely satisfied with the result.
I'm a really sharp,
The front roller had 2 ejector pin marks that had to be filled.
just like the bear with his curly hair. I'm as sharp as a tack, but you ain't nowhere.
Assembly completed. Really? No, the safety chain was missing and I added a piece of brass chain to represent it. And then there was that joint between pump and hose. I couldn't leave it like that. The good thing about armor modeling is that you can hide things like that under a layer of dirt or a piece of cloth. And that's what I did here, and I used a piece of tissue paper that I glued in place using plastic cement. Voila, there you go. Now the assembly is completed. Now for the cargo trailer. The inner portions of each side walls had ejector pin marks and sink holes that needed to be filled. As before with the tank trailer, I made some notes about things I wanted to add. I already mentioned it in my inbox review. The triangular shape needed to be drilled out. The brake handle needed to be changed into the loose position. Both jobs were easier than I thought, and I liked the results.
Keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage, sitting up there on the fuselage. That little frail can do more than a male can do. Rosie, the Revell's
The assembly of the chassis was simple, no fit issues at all.
Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine. When they gave her a production,
The brake handle was glued in place.
proud as a girl could be. There's something true about red, white, and blue.
Again I drilled holes for the wiring into the tail lights. These seam lines were a bit nasty. And here's another reason why I don't use Tamiya extra thin. The leaf springs had to be glued to the axle housing before gluing them to the chassis. With a slow curing glue like Revell contactor, fixing this mistake wasn't difficult.
Rosie, the Revell, Rosie, 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 working on assembly line.
I drilled a hole into each drum brake for the brake lines. And I added a handle for the front leg and a safety chain again. I added the wiring according to the way I did it on the tank trailer.
Rosie, 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 the riveter on the assembly line.
I needed clamps for the brake lines and I used aluminum foil again. I used CA glue for the assembly of the brake lines. Again I made valves from brass wire. This time I drilled the holes before gluing the wheel halves together. I used a nail clipper to cut off the excess. Then I used a flat file to get a nice surface. The result: chassis and bed assembled. That corner didn't fit properly, although I glued the parts in the correct positions. I realized it too late to change it, so I left it as it was. Sanding would have caused too much damage. I added short pieces of chain to the rear end because it can be opened on the actual trailer. Two more close-ups of the brake lines. Since the rear wall could be opened, hinges were necessary. I used two pieces of 0.6mm copper wire, two pieces of 0.4mm plastic sheet, and 4 pieces of 0.5mm brass wire. I marked the wheels with a C and a T so I wouldn't use the wrong wheels for each trailer. They're interchangeable, but I sanded down the spots to different degrees. The pairs must stay together or the trailers wouldn't stand properly.
Can do more than a male can do. Rosie, the riveter. Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine. When they gave her a production knee, she was as proud as a girl could be. There's something true about red, white, and blue about Rosie, the riveter.